I wanted to make a flip through of my 10th journal. I'd recently just finished my 20th journal, but I don't have a catalog of my 10th journal. Let's see if I can get the camera just right first. This one really showcases a lot of homemade stamps, so I thought that would be fun to give you a demonstration or show and tell homemade stamps and how much fun it is and how satisfying it is. All right, this is my 10th journal. The theme is nature. It has a piece of old jewelry here as the tie, and the string closure just goes through an eyelet on the back cover. It has 7 signatures. The cover is tapestry, and this is kind of a firm cardboard, and it's very thick. If you can see, this is probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 inches, the spine. And the theme is nature. I'm going to make sure I'm in your line of view. Yes. As I've done for other flip throughs, I will not pull everything out of pockets because it's hard to get everything back in, but I might pull 1 or 2 things out just for fun. I like to keep it moving because when I watch flip throughs, I like people to keep it moving. The front cover has a big pocket with a lot of little things in it related to nature. Some homemade paper, a note from the bookmaker, a tiny file folder. If you have a little idea, I love things in miniature. That's why I include a lot of things like this. I even made some paper with 3-hole punches as though it's tiny graph paper. And I used old file folders to make these mini file folders. The subtitle's kind of Over in the Meadow. I did use a lot of illustrations from a child's book called Over in the Meadow. This is a homemade envelope that I made full of goodies. A little side tuck. This is some Christmas paper that my mom passed away a few years ago, but she had a bunch of this paper in her stash, and I've coffee dyed it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Here's a pocket, an old ad, reproduction of ads page, coffee dyed papers. This is from a magazine called Ideals. It's kind of a vintage magazine that has illustrations that are really neat for junk journals. This is a junk journal pocket. I'm sorry, not junk journal, junk mail pocket. And it has a little pocket in the front of it, flipped up as well. Coffee dyed paper, a stencil, rubber stamps. I used the whale tail shape of a tag to make a bunch of fabric whale tail tabs. And I've done that. I made a stencil, and then I just cut out my own whale tail tabs. They don't have to be the whale tail shape, that punch. I have found other things to adapt to that. But sometimes I just sit down and make a bunch of different designed ones to have. I make my own stencils and then use them over and over to trace shapes out on book pages and such to illustrate pages. This is a CD envelope. It does have kind of a fall color theme for sure. Little side tuck. These little owls came from a children's book. I think it came from the book called Over in the Meadow. I love the way the coffee dyed paper turned out. It seems like the paper that's on top, that's drying in the air, gets the most brown. But I love the way this butterfly contrasts with that coffee dyed paper. I use pattern paper that you use for sewing patterns, and I cut them in little strips to make faux tape. This is an envelope I made. Filled it with some things. This is an envelope found envelope, and then I tucked things inside and left an opening on the side to put in another tag. This is a junk mail flip. And this, make sure I'm in view. These little bird footprints are from a stamp that I made. I use art foam and cardboard to make my own rubber stamps. And an example of it would be, let me see if I can find one. Oh, I've got some down here. Here's a piece of cardboard. I glue art foam to it. In this case, I did use letters that were pre-made, like manufactured, to make a stamp that says kind. So I could put that in any book I wanted to. But I did the same thing for these little birdie feet. I just cut out some art foam and put it on a piece of cardboard so I could stamp little baby feet, baby bird feet everywhere I go. I saved old handwriting from old letters and just cut them out and use them as collage and other kinds of decorations. This is a leaf that's been dried in a flower press and put on that tag. This tab has a little charm of a bird on it. This is some more of the tapestry that the cover is made out of. I didn't have access to a sewing machine when I made this journal. I was moving from one place to another and my sewing machine was in storage, so I just used hand stitching to make like a blanket stitch around it. So it's not very good, it looks kind of rustic. And this has some of my own homemade rubber stamps on it and some commercial stamps. With a little diamond, I just made one little diamond on a rubber stamp and just kind of tapped it over and over to make a pattern. There are some manufactured stamps here too, as well. A mixture of my own and some bought. This is a tiny tag, or you can use it as a charm to hang from something, but it's just a piece of cardstock or chipboard. You could use it either one, and a book page is glued on it and then a napkin, and it makes a tiny tag or a charm. Doodling your own doodles is a lot of fun to do in junk journals. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's very enjoyable. Little owl peeping through. I found a whole roll of this woven ribbon at a flea market, and it's really a nice texture, and it makes a great belly band or tabs on a page. I made my own stencil, cutting out shapes of birds. This is a pocket with book page and magazine pages. This is a vellum bag. It says, "In a warm little den." A little side tuck. This is a tiny envelope with a tiny little letter in there that you could write a little note on. Columnar paper. I love finding that at flea markets. It's not necessarily antique or old. It's vintage, but it's also very cheap. If I buy it at a flea market, I can buy a whole pack or a whole notebook full for just $1 or 50 cents. So this is from the children's book Over in the Meadow. This is just a collaged frame for the inside of this signature, a little shell button, vintage shell button in the middle. A little side tuck. I made these rubbed leaves probably 15 years ago as an activity with some kids, my own kids included, and I ended up using some of the paper in a letter to my parents. Well, I just came across those letters, so I really enjoyed cutting out the leaves to use in a junk journal. And this is a little charm attached to a paper clip. It's another collaged envelope. sometimes coloring books made for really detailed coloring books are fun to use in junk journals. This is a notebook page that was a really long notebook page that made a great flip out. Put some papers in there. Oh, an old photo of a bear. It's an actual, no, it's a postcard. I have found some old photos that I do tuck into journals. That's a postcard. This is a tab that is made out of, it feels really firm like chipboard, but it's really just collaged cardstock that has so many layers and decoupage on it that it was really firm, and I attached a charm to it. And I just made a stencil out of that, out of a piece of construction paper, cardboard or cardstock. I made a stencil so that I could trace this shape onto things and then glue them in my journal. This is a flip out. Pocket full of papers. Drawing that I made of some mushrooms. A little side tuck. This flips out. It says earthworms and insects in our garden. Again, I made a stencil. Probably found this tag like attached to something that was bought, and I thought this shape will make a great stencil. Also over here is a coin from another country, and I just tucked it in this spot for someone to discover and enjoy. It's a little stencil, metal stencil of part of the alphabet, QRST. I cut out these little fern-like fronds and used them as a kind of like a stencil, but I guess it's a relief. Instead of the actual leaf, it's the outline of the leaf. But after I finished using it, I thought it looked so neat because it had gotten so soaked with ink that I kept it and attached it to different papers here and there. It's a circular frame. I inked up each circle so it would pop out. I used my own homemade rubber stamp to stamp an oval here. Here's another one of those little leaf fronds. I'm not sure if I passed by some of my own rubber stamps yet. This is a dried morning glory blossom from 3 years ago in Honduras, and I am amazed that it has stayed so pink, but it is encased in clear contact paper. Through the lens, it says. This is one of the examples of this envelope opens up, it has some things tucked inside. I put a little flap on there. But this is an example of my own rubber stamps made out of art foam and wood blocks. And here is the corresponding wood block. This is the leaves above. Here's the bird. And I also have a flower here, another leaf. This is, I tried to imitate German Fachwerk, kind of a fascia work on the front of a German house that is so beautiful and creative. So I tried to imitate that by gluing different patterns on the house. Let's see, and there's a bee on that side, kind of a rough, rustic little bee. When I was living in Honduras, we didn't have access to a lot of stores where we could buy craft material, so the kids that I was getting to know and take care of at a children's home, we made a lot of our own things, a lot of our own materials to craft with. Here's the whole alphabet of that little stencil, metal stencil that has 4 letters per little stencil, so I did the whole alphabet here. Here's a little pocket. This is another one of my own rubber stamps using art foam and cardboard or a wood block, whatever you have. Side flip. This is the center of the signature, and I just glued the 2 pages together to make a pocket. I mean, I glued the edges of the pages together, and I glued a line in the middle to make 2 pockets that these tags could go into. This has a little decorated pocket with a owl playing card and a faux stamp cut out of a stamp book, I think. This is a beautiful image that was, it looks like it maybe is signed by the artist, but I think it was on a greeting card that I had, and it just looked beautiful. It looked like fall. I tried to make my own journaling cards out of a drawing of a slice of wood. Thought that would look rustic and cool. These are faux tickets I made using a hole punch and just a strip of paper. I actually used a black marker to trace rectangles to make it kind of look ticket-like. Here's another one of my homemade rubber stamps. This is another one of the homemade rubber stamps right here. This corresponds to it. So if you do one strong inked stamp and then a 2nd generation or 3rd generation, it kind of looks like a shadowy rubber stamp. This is a children's book illustration and just some yarn that is multicolored. Here again, this is the rubber stamp. You can see it corresponds with that. It's supposed to be kind of like ivy. Another one of my rubber stamps, the little rose. I really encourage you to try to make your own rubber stamps out of things. It is very, very satisfying. This is a floating pocket. Someone gave me some tea, and I really like the design on the tea bag. Ponder, it says. There's a pocket. I made a jar stencil out of cardstock or heavier, card. And then I just laid this down, the stencil down, in books and magazines that had like clear space but with small designs or plants inside. That way it looks like something's kind of in the jar. Then I made little lines to kind of imitate what a jar might look like, and then use shading on the top to make kind of like a lid. It still has a lot of space to write on. The inside of the signature is beautiful. Is it Black Eyed Susans, perhaps? And on either side I left an opening for a pocket. So the page before, and then this has some currency from Honduras in it, 1 lempira, named after the indigenous Indian lempira. And it's worth about a nickel, but it's fun to put in currency from other countries. It's like traveling through your journal. An adventure. This is a little paper bag. I had to hand sew on there too. Or I didn't have to, but I enjoyed playing around with hand sewing. The back of that bag is a pocket. This is a pocket. I moved that stamp. The kids at the ranch where I lived in Honduras gave me some pages out of their assignment notebooks. I really enjoyed the text and headings in Spanish. Here's another one of those whale tail shaped tabs that I just made a stencil for and made a bunch of my own over and over. I don't only use that shape, but I do imitate that shape and then make my own tabs. This is from a tissue box. I just thought the tissue box had pretty material. I use other shapes too, but if you don't have access to a punch tool, you can just create your own tabs. If you have space between your signatures, if it's a wide space there. You can glue sentiments in there too. This one says Vintage Garden. This is another one of the stamps that I made, and it is a circle with little tiny leaves cut out of art foam, and then so it's in a circular pattern. So when you press it down in there, you can also do like a really heavy inking and then a second generation inking and really heavy inking to make it have that kind of pattern. I think I have that. Here's my rough rubber stamps here. This one's a different shape. I mean a different design on the circle. But all of these are stamps. This is strawberry. It's just art foam on the back of a piece of cardboard. So it's a lot of fun, very satisfying. And I have other things cut out so that I can do masking with the stamps. I couldn't find that exact stamp, but that's the idea. It's a big envelope. It's some of my own doodles. This flips out for more writing space. This is a little flippy notebook. I think I got that idea from Pam at the Paper Outpost. She may have gotten it from someone else. There's a little floating pocket. I just love this wallpaper sample. It's not wallpaper, it's from a book, but it was describing wallpapers. And this is a tiny crochet circle on the end of that string that was in the next to last signature. Old tea bag container, like a little triangular pyramid container, and I thought that would make a really cool side tuck. So tag inside of this long pocket. This is a vellum pocket, and I made a little closure, and I left space behind it, so I found a whole container of Rolodex cards that were aged, so that was fun to use. Here's that kind stamp that I was describing. This is an origami heart that increases your writing space. It tucks in here. That idea was from G. Kerr. This is a paper lining that was in the bottom of a German tin for Lebkuchen, which is like German gingerbread. This is the stamp I used here. Here's a pocket with a tea bag to write on, maybe about a cozy evening, drinking hot tea. Little side tuck, little circular pocket. Here's another pocket. Here's another one of my own stamps. I didn't have a lot of stamps at the time, so that's why there's so many of my own stamps in this journal. I also made one diamond stamp and then just repeatedly used that diamond to make a pattern. Oh, and this one opens up to reveal another spot to journal. This flips out. There's a little note in here. I mean, a little journaling card. This flips out, and there's a butterfly identification in there. This is a homemade envelope with a bunch of goodies inside. Here's a side pocket, and this has some dyed index cards, but this was a piece of scrap that I wish I could find a bunch more of that mottled green gray paper, so pretty. But I decoupaged a napkin to it to make a charm, or I mean a tag. Here's another one of those jar examples where I put my stencil against a magazine and cut it out. This is a tiny envelope with a tiny little notepad in there. Some more of my own personal oak leaf rubber stamps. Calendar of January. A little bird that I made. I painted this little bird and I printed it over and over to put in journals. My husband encouraged me to do that. He thought the little bird was sweet. He said, you should put those in all your journals. This is also one of my rubber stamps. I was kind of trying to make not a thistle, but some kind of, anyway, it's a created flower, but I really enjoyed that. And this is a store-bought rubber stamp, but I tried to put it in a circle shape to make like a little wreath. And another pocket. And the end has a little pocket that is made out of something like from a wallet or some old wallet, and I just thought that would look neat as a pocket. And a tag that says I'm eco-friendly, and I thought, well, that fits since there's so many recycled materials in these journals. This book is eco-friendly. And this pocket is loaded with a few tags. Some more of my rubber stamps you can see there. Journal number 10. Thank you so much for watching. And I want to give hugs to the girls at the ranch. Angeles, Fernanda, Juanita, Emmy, Kenzie, and Daisy. Kenzie, I know you're no longer at the ranch, but you guys are always in my thoughts, and I miss you, and especially when I'm crafting, I think of you guys. Les extrañamos mucho.